Hi everyone, welcome to today's Off the Page event run by Kogan Page. My name is Natasha. I am a senior marketing executive at Kogan Page and I'll be hosting today's event for you. For those of you who don't know, Kogan Page is an independent publisher of business books and content, and we've created these events to bring key topics to life. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Christine Bailey, and we'll be discussing how you can use customer insights and data to create more customer-focused marketing. Please note that today's event is recorded as well, so we will be sharing the recording with you after, so you can refer back to it at any time. If you would like to carry on the conversation at all, either during or after today's event, we'd also love to hear from you. You're welcome to connect with us on social. You can find us on Twitter at KP Marketing. And don't forget to tag Christine as well and use the hashtag off the page. As an attendee of today's event, you can also save 25% on Christine's new book, Customer Insight Strategies, using the code OTP25 at koganpage.com. So if you'd like any more information after today's event, that's definitely the best place to go. And just a few quick housekeeping rules. Please do feel free to post any questions or comments that you have in the chat box at any time. We'll be doing a Q&A session in the second half of today's event, but we'll be picking up your questions throughout. So please do feel free to use that. If you are using the chat box, please also make sure that you send the message to all panelists and attendees just so everyone can see your great questions. And everyone's microphone should automatically be on mute, but please remember to keep it on mute throughout just to avoid any unnecessary distractions or background noise. And I think that's about everything. So to anyone who has just joined us, welcome to today's Off the Page event. So today we're looking at how customer insights and data can be used for more customer-focused marketing. And I'm joined by Dr. Christine Bailey. So Chris is CMO and Managing Director for Valitor, an international payment solutions company. She has extensive experience in marketing technology and has been voted #1 woman in tech by B2B Marketing and #3 female influencer in UK B2B Marketing by Analytica. She also has a doctorate in customer insights from Cranfield School of Management. So thanks so much for joining us today, Chris. It's great to have you here. Are you ready to kick things off and dive into the subject of customer insights and data?
I am indeed. So good afternoon, everyone. Right, let me just do that.
Okay, I will stop sharing and hand over to you now then. That's great.
Okay, let me just get my slides up.
Okay. That looks great. So over to you, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have more data at our fingertips, don't we, than at any point in history. And we're living in a digitally connected world. The days are long gone where we might have sat on the tube. Well, indeed, if we sat on the tube at all with COVID, but we certainly, wouldn't be reading a newspaper. We would be on our mobile phones. And the digital world has just massively accelerated, hasn't it, because of COVID. So in April 2020 this year, we have 4.6 billion users who are active web users. That's nearly 60% of the world's population, and nearly half of the world's population are using social media. And more people are accessing the internet through their mobile than any other device. And this acceleration of digital, of course, is creating more and more data. And I love this infographic from Domo, which is called Data Never Sleeps, and they've been releasing this every year. This is the 8th one. So they released the 8th version in 2020 this year. And this tells us what's going online every single minute of every single day. It's absolutely mind-boggling when you look at the statistics. And this year, they identified like 3 key trends or 3 key changes over last year. And the first one is that, no surprise, the future of work is at home for now. And we've gone from about 15% of people working from home to about 50%. And of course, this has caused a massive explosion in doing what we're doing now is we're accessing events via the internet, and we're using Teams, and we're using things like Zoom. The second key trend is that FaceTime matters. So people are connecting with their friends and their family over video conferencing. And just on some stats there, where have we got it? Yes, WhatsApp chats, there's been a 51% increase in WhatsApp chats. And you can see, 208,000 people are participating in Zoom meetings every single minute. And the third trend that they identified was what they called curl up with quarantine. And this is a massive increase in the amount of people watching streaming services like Netflix. And I don't know about you, but the most commonly posted post on Facebook at the moment is people sharing tips of what to watch on Netflix. So those are the three key differences. And of course, now this explosion in data has led to an explosion in marketing technologies available to us. And I'm sure you're familiar with Scott Brinker's MarTech landscape. So again, he does this every year. And we've got, it looks a bit different this year because there's just so many marketing technologies. There's about 8,000 of them in total. And the category that has grown the most from last year to this year is data. No surprise to me, of course, that's 25.5% growth in that data category. So we're increasingly using data. There's an increasing amount of tools to analyze that data, which leads us to the question, do customer insights matter? Well, of course, yes, they do. And I like to use this Eisenhower box. And there's this lovely quote from Eisenhower, which says, what is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. Now, how often as marketeers do we get trapped in that urgent, but not that important box? And this is the box that our friends in sales would always like to keep us in. You must do it now. But in actual fact, what we need to do is to slow down, to speed up, and use customer insights to focus on those things that are really important, but not necessarily urgent. And if we look at some data from Forrester, it appears that, yes, there is definitely a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for those people that are using customer insights. So they identify that insight-driven businesses are growing 8 times faster than global GDP. And in another study, if we look at marketeers, eConsultancy did a study and they looked at the correlation between the use of first and third party data and the extent to which people were exceeding their marketing goals. And there's a very strong correlation. So businesses perform better if they use insights, and marketers are more likely to exceed their goals. But even though 74% of firms want to be data driven, only 29% are good at connecting analytics to action. And a huge part of that is that due to the overwhelming amount of data, people are just data blind. So Domo gave us a lovely stat that said 83% of marketers think they're data blind because there's just way too much data. So do we need all that data? Well, data creates certainty, doesn't it, in a very uncertain world. The more points of evidence, the better, right? We've been conditioned to believe that the more points of evidence we have, the more likely we are to influence people, even if we've just made them up, like the person on this slide. Okay, joking aside, let's go to now, where are we going to get our data from? And in my doctorate, which I published in 2008, I identified 5 key sources of data. So they're coming from competitors, customers, market data, employees, and channel partners. And when I went to writing the book, I thought, well, do you know what? That they all still stand today, but there's a big difference from 2008 and now, and that is a huge amount of digital footprint data. So I said they all still stand, but with 3 key differences. So for the first one being that 2/3 of the buyer's journey now happens online. And that, of course, leads to enormous volumes of digital footprint data that we need to be able to analyze. The second one is we've got 400 million people talking to Siri, and we've got 500 million people talking to Google Assistant. So the world of typing and reading is transitioning to speaking and listening. And the third one is artificial intelligence. That's being used more and more in marketing. Okay, so those are our 5 sources of data. How are we going to turn that into insight? And what do we even mean by insight? So I identified 4 different types of insight. That's market predictions, customer segments, propensity models, and customer analytics. And they're being used across the organization. But for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to dive into 4 key areas that we use insights in marketing. So the first one is about creating a mission statement and a value proposition. Most companies are good at saying what they do and how they do it, but they're not good at saying why they do it. And this is what we need for that emotional connection. This is how we humanize our marketing when we talk about our why or our purpose. And there's a fantastic TED talk from Simon Sinek. I highly recommend it. Go and listen to it. It's called Finding Your Why, to help people understand their own why, because if you understand your own why, you're more likely to understand your customer's why and check that you're in alignment. So as an example as to how you might find your why, I'm going to tell you a little story of how we did that at Valitor. So when I joined Valitor in 2017, our mission statement was to be an international payment solutions company. But that wasn't our why, that was our who. We already were an international payment solutions company. So how could we get to that why? What was our real purpose? And when I joined in 2017, we'd made various acquisitions. So we'd come together as actually 5 different companies. And of course, there were very strong opinions internally about what our why was. So I went out and I did a strategic insight study, which had 4 parts to it. First of all, I did interviews with all the key internal stakeholders. And then I looked at our competitors and I looked at their marketing messages. So it wasn't necessarily about scoring them and doing a SWOT analysis of our competitors. It was more about what were their marketing messages out to the market. The third step was to interview payments experts to get their opinion. And then finally, most importantly, we conducted a whole series of end user interviews. And do you know what we found? Turns out nobody cares about payments, but people do care about buying and selling. So that became our purpose, which we've had since 2017 and will continue for a long time to come, is our mission is to make buying and selling easy. But we didn't stop there. We clearly had a challenge because we had these 5 different brands. So I went out and I did some brand perception studies. So I conducted these in the UK and we were always doing it in Iceland. We'd been in Iceland for 37 years. 100% brand awareness in Iceland, but different story outside of Iceland. So we looked at companies in the UK and Denmark, which were our key markets at the time, and we found out what were their associations with payments companies, what was important to them, and what did they think of our brands, the companies that we'd acquired, and the Valitor brand. And it's really important when you embark on brand research that you've got the questions clear in your mind before you start. So you need to know, are you looking to validate something you already know? Are you looking for a new opportunity, or are you testing a hypothesis? And I already had a number of assumptions that people had, from the acquired companies that I wanted to test. So that's primarily what we did in those brand awareness studies. And from that, I recommended that we did a master brand strategy, and that we would start by adding a Valitor company to the logos of the companies we'd acquired. And then we would consolidate on the Valitor brand only from the 1st of January 2019, which is what we did. Then there was just one piece left to tackle in terms of insights for branding. And those were the colors, because we'd created the Valitor logo and the colors a long time ago in Iceland. And I needed to make sure that we had the right association, that the colors were saying the right thing about the logo. So we're going to have a quick bit of fun here. We're going to do a test. So pay attention. I'm going to put 2 colors up on the screen, and you're going to tell me in the chat box which one you see first. So are you ready? Coming now. Okay, red and green, which one did you see first? Now, I can't see the chat box at the moment, but I am going to guess. I'll just give you a moment to say which one you saw first. I am guessing that you saw red first.
Everyone in the chat box, Chris, is commenting red. I think I've had 2 greens And a lot of reds.
Well, the green can know that they're not normal. It's always good to have a few people that are not normal. Most people will see red first, and that's because the brain has to adjust the eyes to see the color red. That takes more energy, and that's the color that you'll see first. And I always joke that when I'm presenting on stage, I always wear a red dress because people are most likely to stay awake if I wear a red dress. But let's just have a very quick share on color psychology. There's 4 color families. So all colors will be in one of these 4 ones, and they will all have similar characteristics, and they will all say something. And the most important thing is that whichever color family you pick, so obviously you can pick different colors, but they should all be from the same color family, because then you're in alignment. And what happens when you're not in alignment, you will see the negative associations with a color. So for example, with red, it might be danger or aggression, panic. Whereas if you are in alignment, you will see the positives of red, which is vibrancy and excitement. So the most important thing is you have the colors in your palette from the same family. So I looked at the logos that we were currently using for Valitor, and shock horror, they're from families 2 and 4. So we were saying we're a technology company, but we don't really care if we're market leading, which is completely the wrong message, because we've been the market leader for a long time in Iceland, our home country. So a subtle adjustment, but most of the colors in our family were from family 3. So we adjusted the logo colors to family 3. And I don't know about you, but just that slight adjustment makes an enormous difference to how you feel about Valitor. And it's really important that when you're doing your brand research, is that you think about the story that you want to tell as a brand, because storytelling really is what it's all about as a marketer. Because stories will influence far more than data. You know, data points are transactional. People don't remember them and they don't respond to them. So here's a test. Can you remember a few slides back, I said 83% of marketers are data blind. They're so overwhelmed by all the data that they see, they can't see the wood for the trees. So again, see if you're paying attention, put it in the chat box, and I'm going to check at the end of the presentation whether you got that stat right. So that's the statistic about what percentage of marketers are data blind. You know, it's stories that, you know, it is what influence people. And Philip Pullman, he's back on the telly, isn't he, with his Dark Materials, that fabulous trilogy. And he says that after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing that we need most in the world. And for those Game of Thrones fans, hands up, I'm a massive Game of Thrones fan, missing that. And he asks the rhetorical question, doesn't he, in that grand finale? And he says, what unites people? And he says, there's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. Nothing can stop it. No enemy can defeat it. But not everyone wants to hear the same story, and not everyone will respond in the same way. So using your insights to tailor stories to different audiences is just as important as being able to tell your stories at all. Okay, so that's a little share on using insights for creating a mission statement with purpose and the value proposition that matters to customers and helps you tell your story. So let's move on to the next one, segments and personas. Well, the days of spray and pray marketing are well and truly gone, aren't they? We can now use customer insights to identify our target audience from a segment of many down to a segment of one. And I think there's 5 steps to a segmentation journey. And the first one is research your segment. Now, depending on how much money you've got, you know, this is something that everybody can do regardless of the size of your budget. Researching your segment, if you don't have a lot of money, you're going to do that yourself. You're going to look at the characteristics of your existing customers. You're going to do some desk research yourself. You're going to talk to people internally. If you've got more money, then you can get some external help to research your segment. But that's the first thing, is understand as much as you possibly can about the segment that you're targeting. The second thing to do is to bring your segment to life with personas. We've talked about humanizing our marketing. So we want to bring this off the page, particularly in B2B, is we want to try and make these real people, you know, inside our segment. And a fun way to do this is with personas. And this is what we did as part of our strategic insight study with Valitor. So we came up with different groups of people that we were targeting, and we created statistics. And most importantly, you need to understand what's going on in the day-to-day life of these people. What are their pain points? What do they care about? Because you've got to bring your messages into their world and not try to interrupt them and bring them into your world. Now, I would say also test your personas with your salespeople to make sure that they agree with them, but also don't go too far with the, you know, the whole personas. I've heard companies talking about, yeah, we've identified a picky chooser. Yeah, great, picky chooser. I'm just going to go to a database company and say, can I have all of your data you've got on picky choosers, please? So, you know, you do have to be able to find these people afterwards. So, you know, so don't go too far with this, but this can be a really useful way to help bring those segments to life. So if we go back to our 5 things, once you've brought your segments to life with personas, you then need to select your accounts. And again, you can do this with the help of your salespeople or with some outside help of a data specialist. And then you want to find out how your accounts are behaving using digital intent data. So I talked earlier about digital footprint data. There are a lot of companies now that can help you track intent. And you can also, you know, use tools like Google Analytics to help you understand how people are behaving online. And then once you've identified those accounts, you want to target them with relevant digital advertising or serve up relevant content. And this ability now to really use insights to hone in on our target segments has led to the rise of account-based marketing, or ABM for short. And you can do this on, you know, a segment of one to a segment of few to a segment of many. And there really are, you know, you can do this. There is an ABM program for any budget. It's not just something the reserve of large companies. Okay, let's have a little bit of fun. I said, don't go too far. Don't get too creative when you're creating your personas. And be careful that you don't just assign social demographics and assume that you're targeting the same person. So I refer to this as the, you know, the perils of segmentation. So we've got 2 social demographic twins. They're male. They were born in 1948. They both grew up in the UK. They're divorced and remarried. They've got 2 grown-up sons. They're stinking rich, and they're world famous. Now, it sounds like the same, you know, cut from the same cloth, peas in a pod. Now, again, use your chat window now. See if you can guess who these 2 people are. And people normally get one of them. Only the clever ones get the second one. So there you are. That's my challenge. Let's see if we can get going in the chat window. Who do you think these social demographic twins are? Let's see how we're doing. Okay, let's see if you've got the first one a lot of people get. So the first one is Prince Charles. Give yourself a pat on the back if you got that one. But who's Prince Charles' social demographic twin, the person who likes all the same things? Did you get this? Ozzy Osbourne. And just to prove that they have met, here they are at an event together. Okay, let's move on to the third area, content, insights for content and thought leadership. And my key takeaway here is you really don't have to be a giant, you know, an industry giant to be a thought leader. Anyone can be a thought leader, and you can use thought leadership to punch above your weight. So there's a couple of ways in which you might use insights for content and thought leadership. First one is to work out what content you need to create. And please think customer first here. What kind of customer what kind of content does your customer want? You know, where are they in their buyer's journey? It's a really useful exercise to map out the stages of the buyer journey, because you're going to need different content depending where they are on that buyer's journey. And once you've mapped all that out, then you need to use analytics and insight to assess how that content is performing. Now, we're all notoriously bad at cleaning up, aren't we? And you know, getting rid of the old content. And the content might have been a fantastic performer, but the moment has passed, and we need to get rid of that content. So please periodically clean up your data. And despite the wailing you might get from the person that created that content, you must clean up and keep refreshing and take down that old content. So let's move on to the fourth one, using customer insights for lead generation. And I probably could have written a whole book on, and I'm sure people have, on this topic of customer acquisition. So I tried to focus this chapter on what I think are the 4 game changers for customer acquisition. And the first one is behavior-based marketing or intent-based analytics, because often we, do as I say, don't do as I do. How often do you say you're going to do one thing and do something completely different? And I think particularly in COVID, where so much of our world has become digital, we can't physically see our customers, can we? So we need to rely a lot more on actually, seeing how people have behaved, looking at that digital footprint. The second one is next best action. So this one is much more thinking, instead of thinking, this is the tactic that I want to use, who would be the best person to target with that tactic? It's best to think, what is the next best action for that customer? And what would be the most appropriate tactic for that particular customer? So that's taking lots of existing data, combining it with artificial intelligence and machine learning. And every time that customer comes into contact with you, you define the next best action. Some companies are doing this really well. So I have a case study in the book from Cisco, who are absolute masters of next best action. The third one is biometrics. So I don't know if you've heard of things like facial expression analysis, eye tracking, galvanic skin response, or GSR. And this helps us understand not just where we're clicking, but actually where we're looking on a website. And are people, for example, following the journey in the way that you expect them to? I think we know from doing email campaigns that the eye line will traditionally follow a Z pattern. But how are people actually doing that on your website? So there's lots of techniques and biometrics that you can use to understand that. And the last one is SEO, search engine optimization. And there's lots of technology to help you continually tweak that. Of course, nothing is better than making sure that you have the right content and that people can find you according to that content. Okay, so on a more lighter note, we're using all our data and insights. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the first thing that could go wrong is we lose our common sense. Now, this is confession time. How many people, like me, have blindly followed the sat-nav that said you should take this route when intuitively you know darn well you should be taking the other route? So we need to be careful that we don't just listen to machine learning and algorithms. And a great example of this is the A-level fiasco in the UK this year, where we blindly followed algorithms and got it completely wrong, and they had to do an absolute U-turn on that. So don't let data overcome your common sense. And another pitfall is when the data will make assumptions about who we are based on what we've told our computer. So this is a game that you can play at home. And I thought, preparing for this presentation, let's have a bit of fun here. So I went into Google and I said, I'm going on a stag weekend. What should I wear? My name's Chris. It doesn't know I'm not male. So what can I wear on a stag weekend? Secondly, money's a bit tight because of COVID. We need to look our best when we come out of lockdown. I need a cheap facelift. And thirdly, when we ever get to go on holiday ever again, I'd like a fun bun bag that I can wear on holiday. So I closed down Google, went into Facebook, and saw what ads it was going to serve me up. And oh my goodness, did Facebook deliver. These are the ads that it served me up after I'd done those searches. So please play this game at home, but wait till the end of the presentation. But joking aside, you've got to be aware that you might get it wrong with your attribution. So be careful, looking at the insights of how people have behaved. They might not be shopping for themselves. They could be shopping for somebody else. Okay, so let's wind up now and just take a more serious look at, okay, analytics and insights of what we need to be using as marketers, but what is stopping us from using those analytics and insights today. And this is a great piece of research from Adobe and London Research, which was looking at the things that are the most significant barriers to success. And the first one is the culture of the organization. If you're in an organization that doesn't let you experiment, doesn't let you try new things, that's going to be the biggest barrier. The second one is the lack of skills, and we all have a responsibility as marketers to get more data literate. And the third one is the lack of investment in data capabilities. Now, we know that's changing because that's the biggest growing and fastest growing category if we think back to that MarTech landscape. And I think, yeah, there's not too many more surprises in the reasons why people are not using data. So let's wind up with a few key takeaways from today's session. First one, COVID-19 has had a really intensified impact on the amount of data that we're consuming. The world was already going digital. It's just got a whole lot more digital because of COVID-19, and it's never going to go back to the way it was before. So we need to be using insights. There is definitely a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for those who are using insights. So companies are performing better and marketers are more likely to reach their goals if they're using customer insights. Where are we going to get those from? Well, I think there's four main areas that we're going to get our data from. That's competitors, customers, markets, employees, and channel partners. And we need to use that data to create customer insight. And the main four types of customer insight are market predictions, customer segments, propensity models, and customer analytics. And we should be using these insights across every area of marketing. And I illustrated how you could use those in four different areas today. The world is definitely going to stay more digital, and there's going to be more and more data. Now, did you get the percentage right of marketers who were data blind? It was 83%. So give yourselves a clap on the back if you got that right. 83% of us are data blind. And there will be numerous challenges along the way. But I believe there's never been a more exciting time to be in marketing. And if you use customer insights, it will help you understand your audience and help you create remarkable marketing. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Chris. That was really, really interesting and insightful, especially those examples. Very good way of kind of highlighting where things can sometimes go wrong with data as well. So thank you for that. I can see that we had 2 correct answers on the marketers being data blind question. So well done to Nick.
Well done to those
Bell,
two
who got that right. There were a few close ones, but they got it spot on. That's brilliant. So we'll now kind of go into the Q&A section of today's session. So please, as I said, post any questions that you have in the chat box. But to start off, Christine, a question for you. Looking at the kind of longer term impact of using customer insights, how would you say insights could be used in terms of having a positive effect on brand loyalty for customers? I appreciate that's quite a big question, but is there a way you can kind of give an overview of that?
Well, absolutely. And this is where I think we put far too much emphasis as marketers on customer acquisition. And it can cost between 5 and 25 times as much to acquire a customer as it can to retain and develop them. Yet, we don't invest that time on the retention and the development. So that's where we need to use our customer analytics to really help us understand our customers. And that could be a variety of areas. It could be just sort of standard customer measures that we understand some basic data about our customers. How long do they stay with us? What do they buy from us? Where are they located in the country? What's the average transaction value? Which sectors are they in? Or, how long did it take to acquire them? How long do they stay with us? So some basic customer measures, and an understanding what kind of content your customers want. So to keep them sticky to the brand. Another way of keeping them sticky is to cross-sell and upsell. Again, use your insights to help you understand what would be the best proposition. And this is where we think about share of wallet. How much of the customer's wallet have we actually got? Could we sell them, other products? Is there the ability to cross-sell and upsell? And let's also think about the the customer lifetime value. How long does it take before a customer breaks even, and how long does it take before they really become profitable, and are they staying with us long enough to get to that point of profitability?
Yeah.
Another one is customer life cycle. So we talked about the buyer's journey in terms of understanding what content to create, but also think about the buyer's journey, because they're going to need something different depending where they are in their company life cycle or their life cycle with you. So if I put this into Valitor's world, somebody who's just set up in businesses and who needs to take card payments would be new to cards, whereas somebody who's been in business for a long time is more likely to be a switcher, and because they already have a card payment provider, so we would need to be approaching them as a switcher. And it's great if you can identify events and triggers throughout the customer's life cycle. Banks are particularly good at this, identifying life events, like moving house or having a child or getting divorced, all sorts of things that are likely to trigger a particular financial need. Or it could be, like with software renewals, you need to renew a piece of software, so you get a trigger to do that. We all get those, it's time to renew your insurance or whatever. And what's another trigger? Which a product coming end of life, that could be another good trigger. So that's another way of ensuring brand loyalty, is to show your customers that you know where they are in the life cycle, and you're constantly serving up something that matters to them.
Okay, I think that's, so many good points in there. Thank you. That's a really, really good answer to that. Thank you so much. We also have a question from Janie, who's asked, what are the best ways to measure or gather softer and more emotion-based data, like the impact of brand personality and attributes, or brand image and identity, for example?
Yeah, if you've got the budget, I would highly recommend doing primary research, because it's not until you do qualitative data that you really get to understand how people feel about something. I mean, you can tell a lot from the digital footprint data of how people have behaved, what have they actually bought versus what they say they bought. And I must admit, I'm not a fan of NPS, for example, or other sort of survey-based responses, because I think there's an absolute survey fatigue, and you'll get a certain person that is going to respond to a survey. I think less than 4% of people will respond to a survey. So if you can, try and do some qualitative data. And it could be, it doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. I mean, you could put some quick polls on your website, and see how people have behaved, or just get we do that all the time. We just get a quick poll on the website to see how people are feeling. But do you know what? I'm going to say the number one thing that we don't do enough of as marketers is talk to customers. And I have to say, honestly, people on this call, when was the last time that you spoke to a customer? Make it your goal to speak to a customer once a month, once a quarter. Ask a salesperson if you can join them on the call, or speak to a customer about a potential case study. You really can't beat that. That's where you'll really get the info, the quality, the qualitative data, and really understand how people feel.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, because as someone who works on a marketing team as well, I think it's so easy to just get caught up in what you're trying to achieve and the end goal and all of your kind of processes and stuff, and forget what the customer's actually looking for. So I think that's a really, really helpful reminder. So another question we have from, so Viv has said, so going back to your presentation, she said that she loved the colour psychology bit. She's asked if you go into more detail in the book, which I think is correct. You do.
I do, yes.
Don't you? That's great. She said, do you have any advice on how we can kind of get started with that approach?
Yeah, so actually in the book, at the end of each section, there's key takeaways, but there's also a section called Feed Your Brain. And that's why I give people ideas about what they could do straight away, further reading, people that they can follow on social. And certainly in the chapter, the brand chapter, where I talk about colour psychology, there's a whole load of references of things that they can, Kogan Page has got some fantastic books on colour psychology. But there's some articles and tips on people that you can follow at the back of that chapter.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you. So the next question is from Hisham, who's asked, has said, using customer insights is harder to implement within the B2B business in some industrial areas, for example, skincare B2B business. How do you deal with that?
I guess the first question would be, what kind of insights are you looking for? Because, as I say, you've got to have an idea of what it is you're looking for. So are you looking to validate something you think you already know? Are you looking to test a hypothesis? Or are you looking for new opportunities? So it's hard to sort of give a more specific answer without kind of delving a bit deeper into that. But it will always be possible to find insights, but be clear about what you want those insights to do before you embark on any research.
Okay, I think that's an important point to make anyway. Making sure you know exactly what you're looking for before you start is obviously key. Asking yourself those questions, I think, is really important. So yeah, thank you.
Not necessarily knowing exactly what you're looking for, but you want to test the hypotheses, you're looking for a new opportunity, or you want to test, to validate something you think you already know.
Yes, okay, that makes sense, definitely. Okay, so next question that we have is, so again, kind of looking at some of the points you covered in the presentation, you mentioned about finding your why in terms of sort of mission statement and brand purpose. So what advice would you give for a company or professional looking to find their why in terms of getting started? Do you kind of have any tips for beginning that thought process?
Yeah. So we have a whole chapter on the book about how you find your why. So the quick share is go and look at Simon Sinek's TED Talk. That's a very quick watch, and that's really good. Simple, finding your why. And then I have a couple of contributions from experts in the book around. Context Consulting, which was the company that did my strategic insights, they have like what they call a 5 why approach. So they just keep asking why all the time, just delving deeper and deeper and asking those questions. And ideally, you're asking internal stakeholders, you're looking at your competitors, you're speaking to end customers. But we go into that kind of 5 why approach, keep asking those questions. And understand your own values. I did an interview with somebody who's the managing director of a branding agency in Hong Kong, and he said, look to your original values and test those, to help you understand your why, because you have to really feel your why. It's no good thinking, well, this is what our customers would like, but if that's not authentic, you're going to get found out. So it has to come from within as well. It has to be true to the values of your company.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good point. I think also that's just reminded me of something that I think we've spoken about before, where you said that people are very good at or marketers are very good at sort of saying, what they sell, and that, but not necessarily why they do what they do. So I think that's a really good place to start. That's really important. So looking at what other questions have we got? So earlier on in the presentation, you also mentioned about the balance of urgent and important in terms of the tasks we do as marketers. So one of the questions we have is, how can we push back against the non-urgent and or non-important tasks that are often given to marketing by other departments? Can data help us to make this point to colleagues outside of marketing?
Yeah, well, my absolute favourite question to a salesperson who says, I want to do XYZ tactic now, is to say, turn the question round and say, what outcome are you looking for? Rather than what tactic would you like to execute? Because I would like to send an email campaign. I would like to do, place some adverts. I would like to do this post on social. Turn the question around and say, what outcome are you looking for? Because then you get them thinking about, well, actually, what outcome am I looking for? Because there may be a better way to achieve that. So that's my first quick tip is turn the question around and say, don't focus on the tactic, ask, what outcome you're looking for. And I would say in this day and age, we should always be looking for our data. Now, don't blindly follow it, but always look to see what the data tells you, to make sure that, people are actually behaving, or you know, test your assumptions with data and experiment. You know, that's what we do. What we should be doing as marketers is experiment. But I know it's difficult to slow down to speed up, but you have to box out some time to really think about what you're doing. And, you know, what are your marketing strategies and what outcomes are you looking for? Don't start with tactics.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good point, and I can definitely relate to that as well in my own role. I think I'll definitely be trying to adopt that a bit more. The next question we have is looking at, so going back to more of the branding aspect again, is how is one able to quantify brand perception? What are the key criteria, and how would you go about gathering this kind of data?
Yeah, I mean, again, other than, you know, talking to the salespeople about what are the key factors that really resonate with customers, for goodness sake, go and look at what your competitors are saying, because sometimes we can be on our own little bubble, can't you? And we go, oh God, that's what customers want to hear. That's how we're going to be unique. You know, perfectly crafted wording, and then you go out and then you go, oh, but your heart sinks because literally everybody else on the planet is saying the same thing. So, you know, remember, you're not in your own bubble. But yes, do brand perception studies. You know, we've done that for a long time in Iceland. We needed to go, well, we did a combination in the UK as, first of all, we did quantitative, the surveys, the dreaded surveys. I know I'm not a massive fan of those, but it is a good starting point. Is, you know, and again, it doesn't have to cost a fortune. You can create your own survey with, you know, SurveyMonkey and get some feedback. And then ideally, it's that talking to your customer thing again. You know, never miss an opportunity to ask a customer why they bought from you and what messages resonate. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's really good advice. Thank you. That makes complete sense. The next question we have is from Jamie in the chat, and he has asked, what is the best way to differentiate between vanity metrics and metrics that are of value? It's very easy to get caught up with the data that makes us look good and support what we already think.
Yes, I know. So vanity metrics work to some extent within the marketing team, but outside of the marketing team, don't get carried away with thinking that business people are going to care about your, you know, your click ratio or your, you know, your search engine rankings, or actually they might care about that. If this is a favorite one of mine, actually, is somebody from Valitor going into the search engine and complaining to marketing that Valitor is not appearing on the search rankings. And I say to them, do you not think that we've switched off anybody in Valitor? You know, why would I want to pay, waste my PPC budget serving up an ad to somebody who works for Valitor? Oh, I didn't think of that. You know, so yes, the vanity metrics, you know, impressions, clicks, they have a role within the marketing department. But I think about what's important to the business, and that will be more things like, you know, how are you managing to retain your customers? How many new customers have you got? That I find that the more sort of customer portfolio type metrics are much more valuable to other people within the business. So how many customers do we have? Are we growing our portfolio in the right way, or are we shrinking? Have we got the right balance? What do those customers look like? Are we retaining them? Are we managing to cross-sell or upsell to them? How many new customers are we bringing in each time period or whatever? So yeah, try keep the vanity metrics. You know, let's keep that as our little dirty secret between us and marketing.
Yes, I think that's a very good point. Yeah, definitely. And I suppose those those other metrics you were talking about are definitely things that have more meaning to people with other people within the company anyway, don't they? So I guess focusing on that stuff definitely makes sense. So we have another question from Rochelle in the chat, and Rochelle has asked, could these principles be applied to a more social, i.e. less commercial setting? For example, understanding the insights of the customers needing to receive a vaccine in order to get their trust or buy-in, for example. So customers of a vaccine.
Yes. Gosh, there's again, we've got a chapter in the book just on social. because you know, there are so many insights now from social, and there's a lot of misinformation, and social can have a huge influence on how people think and feel, and there's a lot of untruths out there. You know, you've got things like deep fakes. You can use artificial intelligence to make people look like somebody else. There's a funny example with Jim Carrey recreated that famous scene from with Jack Nicholson in The Shining.
Yes, I've seen that.
Have you seen that? It's really hard to tell the difference.
It is, yeah.
You know, and that's a funny example, but obviously there's a lot more serious examples. And right now it's really worrying that there's so much fake news about, you know, anti-vaxxers, about the vaccine, which is going to really influence people's comfort with having a vaccine that basically is going to save us from complete global meltdown. So yes, insights can be used for everything and not just for commercial purposes.
Yeah, I think that, that's such an important thing to highlight, especially, you know, as we've seen with so many things recently, the power of social in terms of, you know, the different movements that have happened this year, and looking back at the, you know, the presidential election and things like that. It's definitely,
social has a massive impact on how people vote as well. Do you remember was it last year the Great Hack came out, that documentary on Netflix, which was about how not this election, but well, I don't know, the documentary was about the last election in the States, where the Trump administration used 5,000 attributes from Facebook to serve up targeted ads to swing voters, and they served up, you know, 6 million digital ads, compared to, you know, Clinton only served up 66,000. Massive difference in their use of targeted digital advertising. Whether that won the election or not first time round, you can't say, but it certainly was a massive tactic that they used.
Yeah, and still, you can't kind of scoff at the power of that, definitely. That is really interesting. So I think we've just got a few minutes left. So I have one last question to wrap up with, which I think is a very timely one for now. So you obviously shared some trends from 2020 in the presentation, including FaceTime, you know, becoming more important than previous years. Do you have any predictions for what might become more of a priority in 2021 for marketers and customer insights, I guess, and data? I know that's obviously probably quite hard to say at the moment, but any
I'll be totally predictable and say data and insights are going to become more and more important in this digital world, and we will need to use them across literally every aspect of marketing. I think that there will be other trends, you know, like we need to figure out how to make more emotional connections with our customers. Now, partly that it will be understanding them better, so using data and insights to make more emotional connections with our customers, and you know, to be more human in our marketing. Remember that there's a person at the other end of the data, and you know, I think that those are the key trends.
Yeah, I think you're completely right, and I think that's a perfect point to end on as well. So thank you so much, Chris. That's been so interesting. I'm sure everyone today will agree that, you know, it's really, really insightful and very inspiring to kind of get started with some more customer insight focused stuff. I think that's really, really brilliant. Thank you. If anyone has missed any of our previous events, you can see some of them listed on your screen now. You can still watch the recordings on our website, koganpage.com, and you can also view the full list and sign up to any upcoming events of ours as well. And just a final reminder about the discount that you could save on Chris's book. So you can use the code OTP25 at koganpage.com to receive 25% off. Hopefully today's given you a good taster about what you can read more about in that book, but that is now available, and the discount applies to both paperback and ebook versions of the book as well. As I mentioned earlier, the recording of today's event will also be emailed to you all shortly, so you have access to that forever as well. So thank you so much again, Chris, for your time. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me. And thanks for listening.
My pleasure. And thank you all for coming as well. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, Chris. Bye.